right, welcome everyone to another episode of The Independent Mindset, the podcast for candid conversations, staying curious, and simply being better. So, Jason, we are now in our third of four parts in our archetype series. Before we delve into that, though, what's new, man? I know you've been doing a lot of hard work, some labor.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of renovation. As always, it's more time consuming and more costly than expected, but you kind of roll with it. And
Yeah, for audience members, we both fell into home ownership this past year, and on top of that, it was in the middle of this pandemic / inflation / I guess halting the supply. So prices have skyrocketed no matter what kind of work you want to do, even if you do it all yourself.
yeah, no kidding. And you do it with trusted friends. You do it yourself. You do with the resources at hand, and you do it as well to all the standards you need to do. But at the end of the day, it's still a lot. And that's what we were saying before the show. You think how common the need for building materials are. It's just your people are always building something, and the value that it brings to the community, and the abundance of the supply as well, especially in Canada. When you think of wood resources, you would think that would be like the one thing you would want to keep prices down on, just for the value added that it brings to everyone.
Yep.
And it's really part of Canadian culture too. Just, home ownership, home renovation, just manual labor, construction in general. It's really part of our DNA. And it seems like it's one of those things it's harder and harder to be able to do now.
Yeah, it's funny. I'd also add our culture is decks. Last year, we just bought our house, so our backyard was crap. So we added a fence and a deck, which I built. But again, with the prices of lumber even last year didn't seem like it seemed like I had hired contractors to do everything, even though I did everything myself.
And you did a fantastic job. The before and after photos, man, you really did it well. I'm very impressed with the work you did.
Thanks, man. We're pretty much done in the backyard. We put a lot of work. I redid all the patio stones, built a deck, whole bunch of stuff to go with the deck as well, privacy screen, stairs, fence. Now it's really concentrating on the cheaper things, which is the greenery.
That's nice.
Still already got a lot of that set up and it looks good, but I want eventually a bit more trees and plants to add some privacy as well.
Very nice. Yeah, it goes a long way, right? It's just one of those things. It adds to the mood and the ambiance of the place.
That's what you're doing right now, eh? You're going to start a cedar hedge?
Yeah, well, I just finished the downstairs laundry area. Had some fairly intensive things to do there, but that pretty well got all wrapped up. And now the backyard's a little bit lowland compared to the surrounding areas, especially where there's a parking lot in the essentially the backyard of my backyard. So it tends to retain a little bit of water. Ripped the fence out today, so if I sound a little slow and sluggish, because I spent a day in the sun just ripping out old fences and digging. And now I'm digging a trench right around the perimeter. I'm going to fill that with crushed stone to divert and retain the rain runoff. And I'm going to plant a cedar hedge on my side of that. So cedar likes the water. The trench is going to divert. It's going to be a long-lasting fence, so even if it is a little bit wetter land, even after the efforts, it's not going to rot a fence away. So it's kind of a win-win-win.
Yeah, for sure. And you're adding oxygen to the environment and taking CO2 out. So
does that mean I get to pay less carbon tax?
Yeah, I think you've done your part.
Oh, good.
Hey, you'll be proud of me. I spent a bit of time before this podcast, before we start recording, stretching. And it already feels good.
Good for you, man. It goes a long way. I'm definitely due right now with the amount of twisting and turning and lifting I've been doing the last few days. I should take my own medicine right now.
Yeah. Practice what you preach, Jason.
But yeah, man, I'm glad you did that. And it's surprising how much it does feel good. Even mood, like everything feels lighter. Your mood elevates a little bit. You just move better.
Well, they say you live longer if you truly are a stretcher throughout your life. They say it adds years to your life.
I could see that you need to see the studies, but I could buy it on a hypertensive sort of thing.
Yeah, I bet you it helps for arthritis, blood circulation, all the way from obesity. I'm sure it helps with pretty much everything.
I mean, the kin degree is a little far right now, and I'm sure I covered it at some point, but from what I remember, generally good.
Yeah, injury prevention,
Yeah,
which when you're old, that sucks. You can sometimes never recover from injuries. So yeah.
that's true. So what are you? How about you, man? Anything new?
Yeah, not much. I'm like I said, I think we covered last episode. I'm gonna soon start building. Well, basically putting in a hardwood floor on most of the second floor. Um, so that'll be a lot of work. Also, a lot of money. Hardwood floor is not cheap, but it adds value to your house. So that is a plus, I guess. And the other big thing, I guess, started playing beach volleyball. So
Hmm,
things have sort of opened up. And a few weeks ago, I started playing beach volleyball with a partner there.
cool.
So play men's league on Monday night, but I also helped him out yesterday. So did Monday, Tuesday.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right in Ottawa.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, the big league I play is right down the hill from my house. So
Right on.
it's awesome.
Outdoors.
There are like 30 plus courts. Yeah. Yeah.
30 plus course. So it's a big spot.
Yeah. It's a big spot. It's like 30 or 33 tiers and it's basically you play two other teams that night. So 3 teams per court every night of 2-on-2 men's.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of like one of the advantages of the big cities. You kind of have those amenities, and around here you would have maybe enough for 5-6 teams at most, but you wouldn't have a great big laddered tournament like that, like you guys have.
Yeah, yeah, and the talent pool is smaller and all that stuff. Yeah, my wife and I talked about that a few years ago because our hearts are partly, as we are both Maritimers, our hearts are partly both in not only maybe the Maritimes, but just rural living a
Hmm.
little bit more, or at least small town living. And that is one thing, at least when we were younger, a few years back, we would say like, if we move back, there are a lot of things you have to accept to lose, and that's one of them. You can't go just pick up on like a competitive soccer league every Wednesday night, or yeah, beach volleyball. Forget about it.
There might
That
be
kind of
like
stuff.
a sport or a couple sports in
Yeah,
town, but it might not be the sport that you want to play, right?
exactly. Or at the level you want to play it
Yeah.
either. Yeah. So right before we get into our third archetype, which is the lover, but I'll let you delve into that first. We're going to touch on a recurring segment, which is canceled.
Finish him.
So,
I
Jason, I'm
think
actually gonna.
you have a victory lap to
Yeah.
take right here. So
Exactly.
I'm just going to let you. Our cancel segment is going to be you just doing "I told you so's." So take it away. Have fun.
So yeah, it is just I guess I'm prophetic. My victory lap is I didn't have to come up with anything new today because I don't know. We'd have to rewind, but in one of the past episodes we've done, I actually it was one of the first segments of canceled. I think I came up with Lord of the Rings. I said Lord of the Rings will be canceled or whatever. When we say canceled, it doesn't necessarily mean like wiped off of the face of the earth, but it could mean that it's criticized or it's altered or it's ruined in some aspects. And actually, it made the news a few different outlets in the past couple of weeks that the Tolkien Society, so that's the kind of official, legit, more academic type society that loves and cherishes and studies Tolkien lore and literature. This year's conference, which will be held in July 3rd and 4th, the theme of the entire conference is Tolkien and diversity.
Of course it is. What else would you talk about?
Yeah, so it's gotten a lot of flack. I even quickly,
Can I pause you here real quick?
Yeah.
How much more diverse when you want when there's like a bajillion different races and cultures and everything? Like you got your dwarves, your orcs, your urukais, your hobbits, your men, your elves. Men of the West, men of the East. Like you name it, there's a million different cultures in there.
Yeah, yeah. And if you want to complain about color, even aren't the men of the men of the
The
East?
Yeah, the Harad.
They're browner, I guess. They're of a different
they're
skin tone.
essentially like Middle Eastern people. So
Yeah,
it's like
yeah. So again, different men of different colors are in the movie as well. But no, I don't know if it's like a critique, but I think it's a bit of trying to squeeze milk out of an almond. That's an expression. But
it is now.
so like there's different papers that'll be presented, including Gundor in transition. Funny.
Wait, what? No.
Yeah. Gondor in Transition, a brief introduction to transgender realities in the Lord of the Rings. So
Why?
I like to think I was a Lord of the Rings movie expert when I was a kid, but I can't tell you I know where that's headed. I have no
Okay,
idea.
Faramir had long hair. That's about it.
But so here we go. The Losoth, indigeneity, identity, and anti-racism. And something mighty queer, destabilizing sorry. Wow, it's one. Yeah, it's one word now. I always was used to seeing that as two words. I'll reread that. Something mighty queer, destabilizing cis hetero amatonormativity in the works of Tolkien. Guys, if I sound illiterate, I might be. I've never seen these words.
Okay, so let me break that out. So they're going to deconstruct just the regular male body because you put anatomy in there somehow too.
What's amatonormativity? Right?
I have no idea.
But yeah, they will critique
whatever it is. They're going to take the fun out of it.
Yeah. Anyways, I even went to Reddit because I saw this. I was like, my prophecy came true. Lord of the Rings is under attack. And I went and I looked at the Reddit because this Tolkien Society actually posted, this was, I don't know, months ago or whatever, posted, this is going to be our topics, blah, 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 for the conference. And even most of Reddit, which Reddit I'd say is pretty left. It's, it's very woke in many Reddit camps. And most of the conversation was overwhelmingly critical. Like basically, yeah, way to take the fun out of this. You're basically finding shit that doesn't exist in the Tolkien world, like all of this.
So they're basically, it's the same thing Star Wars did when you got the sequel trilogy, just they're even leaning more into it, right?
Yeah, you're politicizing everything. You're making it neo-Marxist, all this stuff.
Yeah, it's just good old culture.
It's not. It's lore. It's pure, amazing, what do you call it? High fantasy or whatever.
And here's another sign of a culture in decline. They always tear down what exists but never build anything up. So I
talked about that last episode.
So it's like, hey, instead of like critiquing, okay, maybe you don't like Lord of the Rings, that's fine, leave it alone. Things that I don't like, I just don't bother with them. You want to have your perfect, every single critical theory box checked in a fantasy world, write your own. Just go write it. They tell us all the time on the right, go make your own Twitter. go make your own internet, go make your own Facebook. Just go write your own story. Make a good story, with all your values and that checks all your boxes. You're gonna have to rewrite it every 6 months because the goalpost is always changing. But
that's true. Yeah, you'll be offensive 6 months later and very out of vogue. But also try and write something like Tolkien. Like try and invent a world as large, as rich in history, in made up history. He invented a language, for God's sakes. So try and do that.
He started with a language and then wrote the story.
Try doing a fraction of that and see where that gets you.
Oh, and also be a veteran of, I believe, the First World War.
Yes, yeah, because he wrote his stuff in the 30s.
Something like
he started in the 30s. I think he started in the 30s. That makes sense. All right. So without further ado, that was kind of like our different version of canceled because for once we were right about something. Again, who knows? Maybe we'll hit a roll here and like a bunch of stuff.
I'm really waiting for my prophecy on Pokemon and being canceled. I'm really surprised that one hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, that would suck. All right, Jason, let's change the tone to something very positive. The lover. So our third of 4 archetypes. Again, guys, we were following the Jungian model. But more specifically, we were following the 4 grand archetypes that were, I guess, perfected and laid out in the literature from Doug Gillette and Robert Moore. Thank you. I needed a refresh there. So they had the big 4 that they laid out, which was the king. We covered it in part 1. Part 2, we covered the magician, or we could also substitute with the coach in a way, the teacher. Now we have the lover, and last but not least, next time, we will cover the warrior. So, Jason, I'll let you take it away with the introduction of the lover.
Yeah, well, the lover is probably one of the more interesting. One of the four, like the king's pretty self evident, and when you go through, you're like, "Yep, makes sense. Very kingly. Okay, I get it. Sure, it's not just a guy sitting on his throne. Any man of essentially decent morals can espouse the king energy. Magician, also very straightforward. Learn, teach, be humble, be creative, all that good stuff. When we get to the warrior, that one will be quite straightforward. Also, it'll make sense. But the lover is really one that's, I would say, is misunderstood, especially when we get to the childhood archetypes. Like the first one in his fullness is the Oedipal child. Right off the bat, you think Freud, right?
Yeah, yeah. You think weird was a it's a Greek story, I believe, where
Yeah, Oedipus complex, all
Oedipus,
that good stuff.
yeah, Oedipus ends up killing his father and marrying his mother without him knowing that either were his parents.
Yeah, weird shit like that.
Yeah,
But the all the other archetypes are very straightforward, very concrete, very much dealing with reality, and have a lot of discipline and drive, and live within a box and a set of morals. Whereas what the lover does, it's really about experiencing life to its fullest. So it's kind of taking off the constraints of the other ones and being able to appreciate what is in front of you and be able to appreciate the moment. Appreciate fine wine, appreciate art, appreciate human connection, appreciate your significant other. It's all about understanding the depth and the meaning. And there's a ton of room. I really like this one for its shadow forms, because it's so easy to fall prey to the shadow forms. And I would argue, maybe this one's just for me, but the lover in his fullness is the one that's the most difficult to access.
yeah, yeah. Especially as a man, I would say, and looking through these forms of the lover archetype, what I found difficult was to find, because we always try to give examples from pop culture and literature. I found this one the most difficult to find accurate examples, not because they don't exist, but because it is. I agree with you. It's a bit more complex, and also I find that there are less pop culture examples and more personal examples, because I think there's a lot of all of the lover archetypes in all of us or most of us, but they don't necessarily dominate in they don't necessarily make for the best masculine, easy to write archetype in a book or a movie.
I feel like, say, in the Renaissance, it would have been very common because it was all about discovery and new things. And, from what we understand of what the Renaissance was, of
Right.
course. But in a post industrial revolution age where everything is systematized, everyone is either work or rest, or work and chores. And also today, when you need a dual income to get by, and like
Yeah.
all these things, it's a lot more of a hustle sort of.
Yeah, methodical.
It kind of takes away the love and the character and the enjoyment of life. The first, like, if I had to pick a culture, I would say that resembles a lover would be Italian culture.
Yeah.
Very, it's not just the whole kissy thing, but it's very much having to do with community, appreciating your work, appreciating your family, appreciating the sights and the sounds, and the environment around you. So I think in our culture, we've lost touch with the lover in general.
Yeah, and I would also, right before we dive into the forms here, I would say the lover is also the one where it's really easy. The lover can easily fall into these stereotypes or these slogans, these cheap slogans that I hate, right? Like live, laugh, love, eat, pray, love. Kind of all those feel good memes or posters that often, like, I don't know, teenage girls like to put up on their wall, or the first apartment they get, they'll have these, like, it's just like this simple thing. And you're like, if we all live this way, life would be better. And it's just like, yeah, but life doesn't work that way. So I would stress that this is probably the archetype where you definitely want a piece of it, but you can't let it dominate who you are at all times, because you just won't be productive. You won't be realistic in a lot of ways, which can be detrimental at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. So what do you say we start with the childhood archetypes, and then we'll build right into the adulthood ones, and kind of see where they take us?
Absolutely.
So the childhood archetype of the lover is the Oedipal child, like we mentioned earlier, and that's the childhood archetype in its fullness. It's the positive archetype. So it's it's that childhood desire for connection. It's, you know, when you're a younger kid and you can just easily make friends. Like I remember I was in kindergarten one time having lunch, and I just looked over at some girl. I had no idea who she was. Also in my kindergarten class, like, do you want to be friends? And she was like, yeah. And then there you go, we were friends, right? It's that need for connection, that want for connection, and kind of everything is very pure. Like you only see the good in people. You're a little bit naive because you haven't been through that, and you haven't matured as an adult yet. But it's that little piece of you where always it wants to see the good in people. And it's also a desire for beauty. You know, it's a desire to want to be surrounded by nice things. It's a desire to to connect to your family, to connect to your parents. It's really, I'd say, the most innocent of the childhood archetypes. And yeah, so as a man, like you still carry a little piece of that with you, but it's being able to still be soft and gentle and loving and caring, but not being dominated by that. So the Oedipal child does have also that feminine aspect, a classically feminine aspect, where it is a little
More of
bit
the nurturing relationships, things like that.
exactly. It's a little bit softer, a little bit more people centric, and wanting to see others grow and develop, and just everything's nice just because it is. You're a little bit blinded to some of the harsher realities of the world, but your heart's in the right place.
Right. Yeah. I did read that one of the, I guess the weaknesses of the lover in general is that sometimes you may try too hard or be too naive when it comes to pleasing others or relationships with others.
And actually, the example that I thought of this one, and it ties really well into your canceled victory lap earlier, is the Hobbits. To me, the Hobbits are adults, obviously, but very much exemplify the Oedipal child. They live it in a picturesque little location. They're always everyone. There's no dissent. There's no fighting. Everyone's happy with each other. Everyone's merry,
It's true.
peaceful. There's no predators, so there's really no need to be, defensive or
No one's in a hurry. Everything's slow in the Shire. All of that stuff.
exactly. To me, that's like a very adult example. Like it's almost impossible to be the Oedipal child as an adult because the world will eat you alive. But I think that's like the most relatable example that I could think of, anyways.
I did like that example. I saw you wrote that down. Yeah, the Shire is very much like it's almost like a rural heaven, right?
Yeah.
This is what heaven would be if it was agrarian themed. Like that's kind of, and I remember by far my mom's favorite aspect of the Lord of the Rings are the hobbits and the Shire. She's like, I would absolutely live in the Shire tomorrow.
Well, they're as innocent as they come, right?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. So no, I think that's a good example. And even I like that you put him in the child form of the lover, so the Oedipal child, because even throughout the entire series, they are children, right? As much as they're adults, they're children to the world. They're naive. They haven't seen the rest of the world like all other beings on the journey. They make mistakes like children. They're curious like children. They're stupid like children sometimes, that kind of stuff. They make gaffes. The one I put is Hercules, and I am relating it directly to the Disney Hercules. I don't know about you, Jason, but by far one of my favorite Disney movies growing up. Like by far.
I only watched it like 3-4 times, but I remember like the scene, like she goes to like cut the fil, and it's like golden underneath. String, like, oh my god, you can't kill Hercules. That was pretty.
He's a god now.
That was pretty cool. So yeah, what about him brings out the Oedipal child?
Well, again, just that would be early on, where he's. Well, first of all, he's the son of Zeus, so he is a god, a baby of gods. So loved by everyone, and vice versa. But I see it even when he becomes an orphan, right? He escapes from Mount Olympus, or actually gets kidnapped, but is adopted by these two nice peasants or whoever. Now the movie's it's been a while, but he doesn't necessarily fit in, but tries really hard to fit in. The other kids make fun of him. He's kind of this skinny, wimpy kid. But I do see an aspect of him as the lover, and even later on, it is partly to his demise when Hades knows that and takes advantage of his loving nature for Meg and his family and all of that.
I find when you look at the hero's journey, it's very much the first stage or two. It's kind of that innocence, and even right after the élément déclencheur, it's that right before you start learning the ropes and you really get kicked in the shin often enough, you're like, the world is different, but you're still carrying that same innocence you had before the élément déclencheur.
Yeah,
How do you say
absolutely.
élément déclencheur in English?
Yeah, it's a good
The thing that kicks off the story.
yeah, exactly. The one action that makes you go, oh, okay, the story is starting. There's
Yeah.
the plot,
Okay.
the plot begins. Yeah, I don't know if there's a term for that,
There has to be.
but it was a huge term in French in like story writing and storytelling. There's l'élément déclencheur. Anyways, for you Anglophones out there, it's like, whereas the climax is the very end event that happens to kind of close off the story. Well, this one is the first event that opens up the adventure.
Yeah,
or
it's
or
like
the intrigue.
when Luke's adoptive parents get murdered, and then he goes off with Obi-Wan. Well, that initial death is what ushers him into that new life.
Oh, a Star Wars example. Great.
I got you.
Anyways, all that to say, too, guys, Hercules, yes, of course, he's the king. Of course, he can also be a warrior. It doesn't mean that he can't fit in partly in some other archetypes as well.
So the active shadow form would be the mama's boy, and very, very aptly named. So this one here does understand like connection, is able to make connection, but is dependent on it. Whereas the Oedipal child is, wants those connections, but he doesn't hold on to them with two hands. So the mama's boy, very much dominated by his feminine, very meek, very passive, doesn't put himself first, craves that connection and holds on to it for dear life, like his life depends on it. So the example I came up for that one was Leonard from Big Bang Theory. So also an adult, but very, very passive. Definitely doesn't have the warrior in him cultivated.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to offend. Doesn't rock the boat. Is very much too nice.
Yeah, he's very much like a soft beta male.
Exactly.
Who's cringy almost in how kind of in his shell he is.
Right, and his desire for connection is very awkward. He doesn't know how to forge proper social connections, how to forge proper romantic connections. Everything's very clunky, and it's partially from not being socialized well, not having that good proper development. And even if I haven't watched the show a ton, but it seems to me there was some sort of parental issue with him and his mom too.
Yeah,
like in the show.
I think you're right. Where her mom was, his mom was domineering, if I remember.
Something
I can't
like
say.
that.
I gotta say, I actually hate the show. I don't find it funny at all. Anyways, it was like a cool concept for 3 episodes, and I've seen clips lately, and I'm like, holy crap, how is this a hit show?
Yeah, I got old quick. But anyways,
so
that was the example I thought of the mama's boy.
I'm curious. I thought of one. I don't know if it's correct, but we'll discuss here. I'm curious what you think, because I went for the more like true shadow form, whereas Leonard is still a benevolent guy, but it is negative in the long run. It's not great. It's not a great male archetype to have. The one I went with is much darker. Is Will Ferrell in Wedding Crashers, where he's still. I forget his name.
Whatever. Every movie Will Ferrell's in is just Will Ferrell.
The meatloaf, ma. That Will Ferrell, where he's he's an asshole. He is brash, rude, not nice, but he still lives at his mom. He's a loser. Like when you pull back the curtains, he is through and through a loser. He is not capable of having healthy relationships with women. He is a womanizer in that sense. But again, still has that very odd relationship with his mom as well, as a 40-year-old who lives at home.
I think that's a perfect example.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, no, really, and it's funny because that's an adult who is very much stuck in a childhood archetype. And you think, if you have that aspect to you, how could you ever become a king? You could argue that he's become a magician because he's learned to seduce, so he's learned a secret skill. So he has a bit of magician to him because he's learned a thing. Definitely.
But the whole point is in the negative way. He goes and picks up chicks at funerals.
Exactly. Start crashing funerals.
That's it. Actually, that's a probably one of my top comedies, though.
Oh, it's so good. Comedy. I would.
Yeah,
I was gonna say I would love to go to a funeral and then you see what like try to run game at a funeral.
that's such a bad person. Like,
It would throw you off so much that you couldn't do anything but laugh. Like, because guys gonna get booted out in no time. But
yeah, yeah. I think that's the one thing that's pretty unrealistic. Like, dude, you're not from this wedding. Get out of get out of here.
but yeah, man, I think that was a great example.
All right, good, good.
The other passive form is the dreamer, or sorry, the other shadow form is the dreamer, but this is the passive one. It's the passive shadow form of the edible child. This one here, instead of going towards relationship, fears relationship. So becomes very turned into oneself, is aloof, rejects real relationships in favor of their own thoughts, and generally becomes socially stunted because they never practice relationships. This is one I had a hard time finding someone when it clicked. It really clicked for me, but it's one of those that you can think of a bunch of examples in your personal life.
Yes.
Kind of harder to find them in pop culture.
So I agree with you. Before you give yours away, which is good, it's making me laugh. Uh, the dreamer, I found that it was much more relatable to growing up. You know, there was always those kids that were just loners. Their personalities were very much to themselves. They weren't very apt at making friends, and they were, you know, they may have been socially awkward, but they were also kind of okay with it. They were dreamers. They were daydreamers. It's just what they did. They were these aloof kids. But there's less of that on, you know, TV or literature, things like that.
And like I was trying to think of like the stereotypical IT guy, the stereotypical gamer guy, like the stereotypical shut-in sort of thing. But I couldn't find a good pop culture reference, even though that's typically what's coming to mind. And I remember having like elements of that as a younger guy too, where you just sit in, play video games all day, and that's all you want to do, and you're okay with it.
Yeah. Or you feel awkward socially in some parts of your life. I think most of us have been there, especially around teenagehood. It's just an awkward time.
Yeah, it just, I mean, we were choyé that, you know, there was friends around, there was people around, so it forced us out of our shells. It forced us, you know, to make social mistakes. You're like, okay, well, that didn't work. I better try something else next time. And then you're just kind of like feeling in the dark until you find the, you know, the sacred scroll. But if you don't do that little discovery, then you never find it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my example was from The Hangover, and it was Zach Galifianakis' character. You know, he's not dumb. He plays up being dumb, which I would say is another child form, the dummy, which we covered from The Magician last time. So he's very much stuck in childhood archetypes. But,
Alan, that's his name. Alan.
Yes, Alan. Yeah. It's another actor where you're like, well, I don't care what the character's name is. It's that guy.
It's Zach. Yeah.
It's Zach. But very passive, very aloof, definitely rejects relationships, obviously socially stunted, like no calibration whatsoever, roofies his friends. Like,
yeah. Goes for the blood pack, cuts his hand open.
Like, okay, massive comedic effect there for sure, but it's I think a really great characterization of that archetype.
Yeah.
And I think it's one that's easy to slip into just at times. Like, say when you hit like a wall socially or professionally or whatever, it's easier to turn inward than, you know, maybe turn inward for a week or two, and then go back out. But I think it's very seductive to turn on oneself and just kind of stay there because it feels safer.
Yeah. I think both, like, you and I are similar in the sense that we can both, I'd say default, we have we're not necessarily introverts, but we have many introvert tendencies or interests. So we can be happy with, you know, could be reading, research, video games, exercise, a lot of things we can do by ourselves. And then at moments, I do enjoy being extremely extroverted and social.
Yeah,
so
same.
We all have those bouts where, and I even have those bouts. Maybe I'm a little too self-aware, but I'm at a party or something, and maybe I said a few things, and I'm like, oh, I was probably that really socially awkward guy, or that guy where people were like, oh, what a weirdo. And maybe it wasn't. It was just my head. And then other times it's like, no, Will's like a pretty normal social guy.
I think that's both our curse, is that we're exceedingly conscientious, and we really always understand exactly what is going on, and our failures are like exceedingly obvious to us. Like they just flash red, right?
Yeah.
And
I used to
maybe they're not to other people, but to us, like, okay, that was a goof, or this,
Yeah.
hey, that was pretty good. Good on me.
Yeah, I used to lose sleep over that kind of stuff.
Same.
But again, I grew up and had to get my anxiety in control. But yeah, no, it's for real. So there's a dreamer in all of us, I would argue. The other one I would mention, we had mentioned him previously, but I think he fits partly in here, would be Steve Carell in the 40-Year-Old Virgin as
Yeah,
well.
definitely. Yeah, very good example.
Yeah.
I would say he fits better in there than whichever one we tried to put him in last time. But he definitely does fit very well there. And again, it's that kind of like shut-in sort of archetype. But
Yes.
that's the children. And see, the lover, when you automatically think like relationships, sex, that sort of thing. But that's really not what it's about, right? And even when you look at the childhood forms, it's all about forging proper connections, all about being pure and just enjoying life for what it is. It's a really good base starting point, but you can't finish there because, like I said earlier, the world's going to chew you up and spit you out. So the lover is a little bit more refined, and it's obviously more adult themed. It's fundamentally about connection, about sensuality, but not in the sense of sex. It's just letting your senses be. So, enjoying fine art, fine wine, exercise, company, that sort of thing. It's really understanding pleasures, but not being a slave to them.
I'd say it's a lot of people on the weekend,
Yeah. Yeah, but I would say that's one of the shadow forms. We'll get to the addicted lover
Sure.
a little bit later, but
It's a fine line.
it's a very fine line. So I'm just gonna go through kind of my notes here real quick. I'll try to make it snappy. Then Will, kind of tell me what comes to mind when you hear this. So it's the archetype of idealism, feeling, and of the senses. The lover feels alive and full of vigor and is connected with the world around him. He feels deeply, but it's not about being emotional. It's about being present to the world. This person tends to be very creative, has flashes of creativity, relies a lot on their insight and intuition, is exceedingly good at social settings, can read social cues very well, has an ability to connect with a wide variety of people, and enjoys and appreciates the pleasure of life: food, drink, art, women, adventure. And this person has a purpose. Uh, all this put together, he's not a slave to any of them. He enjoys things for what they are and is able to leave it at that.
Yeah, I would say the perfect motto for that is Carpe Diem, or today's YOLO.
To me,
in a way.
I'll give you it's from a commercial, but it's the Dos Equis guy. The Dos Equis guy to me is he's the world's most interesting man. I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis. To me, that is very much the lover, right? It's like I can appreciate this one thing, but it doesn't mean that's all I like. And sure,
Right.
maybe one day I'm reading a book, maybe one day I'm walking through the Sahara, but I'll appreciate what is there when it's in front of me, and I'll seek out those adventures and pleasures.
It was a pretty genius campaign, when you think about it.
Great marketing.
Because they fabricated this story about a fictional guy, and they're just like, he's going to be the most interesting man on the planet. And then throughout the commercial, which was usually very, very quick commercials, it had like these quick flashbacks to how interesting he is. Whether he's like diving in, I don't know, Cinque Terre with his 3 hot models next to him, or he's fine dining there, driving this car, whatever it may be. It's just this cool things, right? That people like James Bond would do.
I was about to say part Teddy Roosevelt, part James Bond.
Yeah.
Was essentially who he was. But yeah, I think the reason that marketing campaign resonates so well is that it was an archetype, and it was an idealized and an epitomized version of an archetype, and a very healthy archetype.
For sure. My go-to here, and I think describes all of the characteristics, the attributes you gave to a T. It is from one of my favorite, most rewatchable movies. I don't care what anyone says. It is one of my go-tos, no matter what. Probably top 3 movie. And that is Jack Dawson from Titanic.
You're kidding. Titanic's one of your go-tos.
Absolutely.
Okay. Why? I got to ask why.
Okay. Well, first of all, I also love Titanic. Like historically, I do love the story of Titanic. I used to work at a museum, so I where we actually presented the Titanic. It was actually a demonstration I gave. So I loved learning everything there is to know about Titanic. I always liked the movie. I don't know why. I did as a kid, and now I just think it's I could go on forever. So,
Well, there's a lot of aspects to it. Where you got the engineering aspect, because the ship itself is a character in the movie. I'd argue the main character,
and they partly built it.
They partly built it, and it's a time capsule in and of itself. It's a true story. You got the love story aspect, which will satiate a certain crowd.
I actually love So I'll go through it real quick. Great filmmaking.
True.
Great filmmaking. I watch it today, still stands up almost 100%. It is a great epic. It is truly an epic movie with thousands of people acting on screen at the same time. Massive set pieces. James Cameron went super over budget, did an insane amount of real research, dove to see the Titanic, used real footage from the Titanic, used everything he knew about the Titanic to make it as accurate as possible. And from a guy who's researched the Titanic a lot, I can tell you the movie is very accurate. Yes, the love story is its own thing, but of course it needs a narrative.
Right.
He's one of the only directors, and it's one of the only movies where 100% the outcome before you start watching the movie, and it still makes you cry, captivated, everything.
That's
the boat's going to sink. The vast majority of them will die, and you are still, at least to me and to all audiences who watched it when it came out, they all knew the ending, and they still watched it, cling to their seats as if they didn't know the ending. They couldn't believe this was happening.
Yeah.
I don't think
in a very romantic time period also.
Absolutely. That's another thing. And I'm a huge romantic, and I'm not just talking about, boy, girl, a love relationship. I am talking about, the movement of romanticism. So the lover fits in there. And I think there's a big part of me that is the lover in that archetype. But the Jack and Rose story, it happens over several days. And it's, again, one of the only love stories that I can actually believe. I watch it and I'm like, I feel for Rose, I feel for Jack, and I'm in love with the characters, and I'm in love with their love. I buy it in a matter of days. I'm like, yep, this is real.
Nah, man, she didn't love him. She could have pushed over and made room on that door.
Yeah, they all say that.
Hey, do you want to know a little
the door? Blah blah blah.
Hey, do you want a little factoid about this one? Neil deGrasse Tyson pointed out to James Cameron that the constellations were wrong in the nighttime scene when the ship was sinking.
Okay.
And James Cameron went and changed it. He changed the constellations.
I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know that. There's not a lot of stuff about Titanic that I don't know. And I believe that James Cameron.
Can you imagine how tedious that would be? Frame by frame changing the fucking stars?
Yeah, and James Cameron do that. Also to add, James Horner was the composer. Love the music, love all of the soundtrack. The portrait, the piano and the portrait when he draws her is just that gets me every time. Celine Dion sings the credits. What more do you want? It's fantabulous.
It's also very memeable now. Okay, but anyways, Jack. Why is she the lover in this?
Well, I mean, Jack is the lover. He's and I would say in the most positive form, right? He's that hobo. He's that super tramp that travels the world, lives in the moment. But still finds a way to make a living, to just, be able to live and do whatever he wants. He does what he pleases one day to the next without being a toxic example for anybody or without being a bad guy. He seems to bring humor or joy to anyone he touches in that sense, whether that is Rose, and he changes. And you can actually see at the end of the movie, despite her having a nice life with another husband later on, she lived her whole life based off of his lover mindset.
You could also insert some red pill here, and she got alpha widowed. She very much got alpha widowed in the span of 7 days.
You actually see it throughout at the very end, right? Her entire adventures. She goes horseback riding like a cowboy. She flies a plane like Amelia Earhart. All this stuff, which are a lot of them were mentioned, where he's like, yeah, we'll go to the pier. I'll teach you how to ride like a cowboy. All these things in a span of a couple days. He teaches her to spit like a man, all these things. Right. So yeah, Jack to me is the epitome of the lover, in every positive attribute.
Yeah. And that's what I like about the lover is that if he's well harnessed, he is the archetype of social connection. He's going to bring people up. And see, it's very important for the king to have this to him, because that's the king who's going to be rassembleur, right? He's not going to lead with fear.
Yeah.
He's going to lead with love. He's going to lead with understanding and empathy, and want to see people elevate. And the lover really does play a big component in the king.
Right. And again, in a matter of days, he has I think it's his Portuguese friend in Titanic, and he also made an Irish friend on the boat. All, like, when shit hits the fan, they all gather and listen to each other and follow Jack a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because again, he was that positive example and radiated, a certain amount of leadership, but also just that again, that lover archetype.
What tool does a king have to lead if he can't connect with the people that he's leading? It's going to be fear. It's going to be fear or coercion. So to be a positive king, you need to understand the lover, I would argue.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that's actually a pretty good example.
Go ahead.
I was
just going to say, we've dwelled on it a lot, but one other example I'll give is, and he could fall into, he's definitely a stereotype, and he starts bugging the shit out of me in the movie, but that's also the point, is Russell Brand in Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Never watched it.
Oh, you should watch it. It's a comedy, but
I feel like that person in general, Russell Brand, is very much he's rakish when you talk about style, and
yes,
rakish easily fits into the lover. So I would say he's kind of that archetype.
Well, I would say he plays himself in that movie, but a more caricatured, obnoxious version of himself.
Gotcha.
Is probably, and so after a while it kind of gets to you, but a lot of people like that movie, and he is in a lot of ways the lover, but again, to an extreme.
Right. So how do you access the lover as a mature man? You're like, okay, that's great, but I'm not going on any boats anytime soon, so what do I do? Well, take the time to enjoy the beauty in life. Enjoy the food you're eating, enjoy the company, enjoy the people you're speaking to, look at the colors, go for a walk, just enjoy nature, be present to what is around you, and just appreciate it for what it is. Now, if you drink, if you smoke, if you do whatever, enjoy it in moderation, savor it, but don't be dependent on it. Just enjoy it when you have it, and then let it be and move on to the next thing that you got to do. Understand the deeper meaning in these pleasures, whether it's substances, whether it's people, whether it's activity. Understand the whys and really appreciate it.
I would say it's someone don't be too materialist. Even if you can get appreciation from concrete things like art, and you need a record player to play records and things like that, even if you like music. But at the end of the day, it's more than just the object, or it's not just dependent on the object. It transcends whatever materialism.
Yeah, it's the significance behind, whether it was the work you put into getting it, the work of the person who created it, the colors, or whatever emotion brings out. It's all valid. Spend some time outdoors. You won't find any more beautiful settings in the outdoors, and nothing is more creative than the outdoors. And lastly, seek out creative pursuits. Play an instrument if you got one. Write, draw if that's what you're inclined to do. Read, write.
What Jack Dawson does to make a buck. That's what he does. He's a very great drawer, right?
There you go. So, anything you want to add to that before we go to the shadow form?
I think that's pretty good. Yeah.
Cool. So
I think I've talked enough about Titanic. I mean, I honestly,
almost as much as I talk about Star Wars.
We could do an entire, exactly. It's my turn. We could do an entire episode where I talk about the movie juxtaposed with the actual Titanic and what they nailed in the movie.
Well, I'll sum it up for you. Everything.
Pretty much. It's pretty much a lot.
Because I've seen a documentary on it before too. It's just like, he just did it all. Essentially.
I mean, James Cameron he does his homework when he.
Yeah. Well, actually, the James Cameron, I would argue, is very much a lover. He very much embodies that archetype. Because do you really have to go to the bottom of the ocean to make a movie? Fuck no. But no. It's the opportunity is going to present itself. Hey, it's a business expense or whatever. Why would I not go get that that experience, right?
The movie was way over budget, by the way, way over budget. And then it made it over $1 billion and was by far the best-selling movie of all time at its time. But now he went to Marianas Trench. He did the deepest dive, which he says he's going to use to inspire / maybe directly use, I don't know, for Avatar 2.
Cool.
Because
so
Avatar 2
Pocahontas too.
Yeah, we'll focus a lot more in the water part of this of Pandora, which will be cool because he's again going to take that technology that he nailed a few years ago, and he's going to almost actually 10 years ago, or more. I don't know. It's been a while, but
I think it came out when we were in high school because I remember we went to go see it.
I think it was 2008 or something. Or
Yeah. Yes, Will. We had just graduated high school and we went to go see Avatar.
Yeah, and we were like, "Holy crap, this world sucks." Pandora's awesome. It was one of those movies where it truly made you feel like you were swept away and thrown into that movie. Like it was one of the last movies that truly did that to me, where I stepped out of the theater and I was a little bit blue, not like the people, but I was a little bit bummed out that I was not part of Pandora's world.
I was absolutely blown away by it visually, and then thinking about it later, I was like, wait, it's just a story of Pocahontas.
Yeah, but who cares? It was awesome.
Exactly.
But anyway, so the second one apparently is coming out soon. He took like 10 years to write 4 more, which will all be, I think, then separated by 2-year releases. So
he must be owned by Disney. That sounds like a very Disney thing to do.
I don't think so.
No,
Jim. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, at this point, you can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, fair enough. All right,
the
so
2 best-selling movies ever.
When you think 2? Oh, Titanic and Avatar. Okay,
yeah. Or among the top 3 or something. Yeah, they're huge.
So the addicted lover. That's right. What comes to mind is exactly what you think it is. It's the lover, but he's not able to manage his cravings. He's a slave to his impulses, and he's a slave to his pleasures. Now, forever searching the next fix, whether it's another person, another lover, another experience, another thing, is always hungry for more and never satiated. It's the guy who falls in love with a girl, hangs on far, far too tight. You can kind of see the semblance with the childhood archetypes, and then wallows in despair when she leaves. Has an idea for a business, but doesn't have the discipline to see it through. Collects experiences, collects things, but doesn't have any structure in his life. Nothing has meaning. He just collects and collects and collects.
A hoarder.
But it's not necessarily a hoarder of just things. And he's unable to focus. His energy, instead of being focused, the lover will make pit stops. His energy is very wide, but he'll focus on what's in front of him and then move to the next and the next, but in a thoughtful way, in a meaningful way. Whereas the addicted lover just looking out to everything. He can never put les deux pieds à terre for a moment.
Yeah, can't focus, structure. Yeah. The one I mentioned, just it's a generic one, but in some respects, a junkie.
Yeah, in some respects, for sure.
Right, like in the truly addicted form, and there can be different kinds of junkies, but yeah,
it could be adrenaline junkie, could be love addict, it could be you name your thing, right? It's a very easy one to envision. Alcoholic.
So you have a few interesting ones here.
Yeah, so can't say I watched the show. I asked for help on this one. I was like, doesn't this one fit? So that's my disclaimer right now, and I'm sticking to it. But Samantha, Sarah Jessica Parker's character from Sex and the City. So isn't she basically known just to jump from business to business, guy to guy, martini to martini sort of thing?
I honestly have no idea.
I'm partially talking on my ass on this one here, but I'm pretty sure it's correct.
Are you sure Samantha is Sarah Jessica Parker?
Nope.
In that show?
Nope. I am not sure.
I thought Samantha was the other blonde one, the older one. No, you know what? No, you're right. You're right.
Do you know what? I bet you they're all the same archetype at the end of the day.
And I think some of them are quite similar.
Here's one, a minor character, but I think he does kind of personify it a little bit well. The Collector in the Marvel universe. Now, he's always hoarding a bunch of...
Sorry, I'm just going to stop you. I'm right. It's the older, other blonde woman.
That's called Samantha? Whatever. Sarah Jessica Parker or another one. I don't care. The girls from Sex and the City.
Let's see what her character is. Sarah Jessica Parker is... what's her name? Carrie Bradshaw. There you go. So there you go. I don't know who was whoever friend helped you out. Did they say Samantha or did they say Sarah Jessica Parker?
She said Samantha.
Okay, so it would be the older blonde lady.
Huh.
So, guys and girls listening, Samantha is a shadow form of the addicted lover.
There you go. Cool. Anyways, I said the collector. He's very much a hoarder, very much going from thing to thing to thing. Very nervous, very erratic, very all over the place. Understands value, but always wants more and more. It's a component of the addicted lover.
I see you have Barney from How I Met Your Mother. There's an aspect of him for sure. Archer, I would also put, and Barney a little bit, in also the child forms.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It would be interesting to take a character from pop culture like that and kind of run through the 24 archetypes and be like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, kind of like a case study.
Yeah. And I bet the good characters, the nice complex ones have most of them, or a lot of them for sure. So last but not least, the other shadow form, the impotent lover. What is that about, Jason?
So whereas the lover sees beauty and color and life and passion, the impotent lover does not.
No one wants to be impotent.
No, I know this one's very hard hitting in its titles.
It's a little harsh. Yeah, I know the Oedipal child, the impotent lover. It's a little harsh.
Yeah, the addicted lover. Everything's very like guttural.
Yeah.
But anyways, so this one here, he only sees gray, whereas the lover in his fullness sees colors of life, feels flat, depressive, more dead inside, is unmotivated, has lost that zest for life. It can be a result of too much structure and too much work, and that's kind of what I was getting to earlier with kind of our societal trends, where everything's systematized,
right,
and very sanitized and disposable. Where as a society, I would argue that we're somewhat the impotent lover, and that comes from part of our progress, but loss of our identity. And anyways, I actually really like your example here, and I'll let you run with it.
Which one? I put a couple there. The Grinch?
The Grinch. The Grinch is an excellent example.
Yeah.
Again, very turned in on himself. You could even say there's a little bit of the childhood forms in there, but is very flat, has lost his zest for life. And that's the whole point of the story, right? Is the Who's from Whoville kind of shine a light on
lovers.
Him. Are the lovers.
They're again, a huge caricature, but they are the lovers.
Right. And I'd say more
with
the Oedipal child.
Consumerism, but yeah.
Yeah, true. But what the reason that the Who's kind of grind the Grinch's gears is that they shine a light towards him and hold up the mirror where he has to look at himself and be like, no, I'm actually full of hate. And because I'm full of hate, now I hate you. And then eventually, they make the heart grow to full size and he can love again.
Exactly. Dr. Seuss. Gets to me every time.
Hey, he got canceled.
Yeah, partly, for sure. Another one I put, and I'm curious what you think. And again, partially, this guy's more complex. He is absolutely the warrior, and we will cover him a lot in the next podcast. But that would be James Bond. I would say definitely, especially if you base it off of his origin story, and if we look at the more revamped series with Daniel Craig, my favorite by far Bond movie is Casino Royale. Love that movie. I think it's very well done. Still stands up. And that version of James Bond, when he's hurt and when you kind of realize, okay, that's how he becomes like this detached womanizer, and he's even cold, like on his, like he has a mission for king and country, but at the same time,
it's for himself.
He's still very self-righteous and egotistical, but also kind of doesn't care about anything. Even though he does it well, he doesn't care.
I think it's a very good example in the sense that it's almost he got the passion ripped out of him.
Exactly. Yeah, he got screwed, right? He got betrayed by the one woman he let his guard down and fell in love with.
And he's partially an addicted lover to try to make up for it, but at the same time is so detached from it, it's almost mechanical for him.
Yeah, and at his core, that's why I'd call him an impotent lover to a certain extent. He even does it like he's also an orphan child, right? So he already has that. He's detached for that reason as well. He was, abandoned for better, for worse term.
And really what sticks out to me when it comes to the lover, it's how much it's a prerequisite to be the king. because you can tell if you could have the warrior that we'll touch on, but you can kind of imagine what the warrior is. If you have the magician in full colors, but you're not the lover, you're going to be a very bad king. You almost automatically will either be the tyrant or you'll be the other one. They're the passive one. A minute.
Oh, the weakling prince.
Yes, the weakling, exactly.
Yeah.
So you can see if you're not a lover in his fullness, you're either going to hate and be forceful, or you're going to run from responsibility and then lash out. So yeah, I think it's a very underappreciated archetype. It's something that our society has lost. I think all the archetypes, we've lost them in men in general, but this one here is one that we're forcing men to try to be more conformist, more socially acceptable to whatever the new narrative is, which you and me have our opinions on for sure, but it's not necessarily positive. And you could see how, leaders of industry, people who create and build and are creative and develop things, need to have the lover in its fullness within them, because it's the only way you create social connections. You have passion for life. You enjoy things when they're with you, and you just go about your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say I'd finish off by saying, we talk a lot about pop culture, in recent times to be a bit more relatable. And it's always fun to talk about, our childhood movies and that kind of stuff. It's very easy to kind of picture and relate to. But the lover form archetype is one I'd say is very prominent in ancient culture.
True.
It's often what you'll see in art, right? It's often those great kind of Michelangelo-esque portraits or of those eras, where you have a lot of the centerpieces of men and women in those paintings, sculptures, whatever it may be, are, I would say, mainly the lover archetype.
And I think the lover balances out the warrior very well, and the warrior balances out the lover.
Yeah, for sure. Which will be as a segue to our next and last episode of the series, which will be the warrior.
Yeah,
to close off the archetypes.
And I gotta say, this is kind of fun, right? It's part pop psych, it's part human nature, and it's a fun topic.
Yeah, no, it's been fun to do. So looking forward to the last one, but I'll be a little sad too.
All right, well, everyone, thank you very much for listening to this episode of The Independent Mindset. Greatly appreciate a like and a share. Go comment, reach out, see if there's something you agree with, you disagree with, if there's other archetypes or there's other examples that we missed that you think would fit well. And as always, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, Instagram and Facebook. And again, thank you very much for listening, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.